there are two roads. There's a self-serving road and there's a serving road. Whichever road we choose, it's going to make all the difference.
What do you want and why?
Yeah.
Because there's a road that'll take you there, and there's a road that'll take you so far from there, you would not recognize where you end up.
If you ask me, really great leaders live last. Welcome to the Lead Every Day Show. I'm Randy Gravitt.
And I'm Mark Miller.
And we've been having this conversation the last few weeks about this idea of winning beginning at home. And I got a book coming out on June 11th, Winning Begins at Home. I hope you've pre-ordered. They're telling me, our team's telling me that if you'll go to winningbeginsathome.com, we actually have a place, once you pre-order, you can enter there, got all kind of bonuses for you. But there's a place that you can actually order bulk stuff there, and we got all kind of offers all the way up to, I think if you buy enough of them, I'm gonna come do a keynote for them. So for your company, so pretty cool opportunities there, some bonuses there. Get your copy. Go to winningbeginsathome.com, check that out. But Mark, I years ago, remember, it's been a lot of years now, when we were in maybe high school, and I've been a whole lot of years. I first read the poem by Robert Frost, "The Road Not Taken." You remember that poem? And I don't know exactly. I know there's snow in the woods, and he ends up taking one road versus the other. And at the end, I do remember the line. He says, I took the road less traveled by, I believe is the way he said it.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what he said. I love this little phrase. He said, and it has made all the difference. And I like that reminder that there are two roads. He wasn't necessarily talking about the roads we're talking about. There's a self-serving road and there's a serving road. And if we choose the road, we choose to live last road, or if we choose the other road, I think whichever road we choose, it's going to make all the difference. We're either going to have a heart that is hard and maybe full of regret at some point, or we're going to have a heart that is pliable and right, motives are right, and we actually have a chance to be really fun to be in a family with. And I know this is a challenge, but I think all of us get to choose which road we take. And so we're talking about fundamental number 2, to live last. It feels like these two roads are going to determine a lot when it comes to our family life.
They go different places.
They really do.
They go different
They
places.
really, and they definitely have different outcomes.
Which goes all the way back to the first or second of the episodes in this series when we talked about what do you want and why.
Yeah.
Because there's a road that'll take you there, and there's a road that'll take you so far from there.
Yeah.
You would not recognize where you end up.
And I know so many people who end up on that wrong road and will tell me later, like, I just didn't mean for this to happen.
Right.
And so how do we stay on this correct road, this live last road? Well, I think there's a concept here that we know about this. We talk about it in the workplace some, but we don't really think about it maybe as much as we should at home. But it's really the idea of listening. I think listening is such a powerful way for us to know what somebody else is thinking. I mean, do we listen, or are we just hearing? I mean, are we really hearing? I mean, I don't know how we say that, but it's like sometimes I can listen to somebody and not really hear what they're saying. Maybe that's the way best to say that here. I think all of us can recall those times when we are with someone when we're not really with them, and that's a dangerous thing, to not really hear the people around us. And so
I mentioned in our last episode that I'm not great at seeing needs.
Mm-hmm.
So
you ask though.
My default is that I ask. Mm-hmm. Well, but I've got to listen carefully, because asking is step one. Mm-hmm. I've got to hear, and I've got to understand.
Yeah, right. What are they really saying?
Like, what are they really saying?
Yeah.
And then, of course, I need to follow through. I need to take action.
Yeah.
And sometimes I forget, which then can turn into a conversation is, well, you weren't listening.
Yeah.
Well, no, I actually was listening. I just forgot. So, I mean, I'm spending more time at home than ever.
Right.
Since through COVID, and since I've transitioned out of my role at Chick-fil-A. So I'm having more and more opportunities to get this right.
Yeah.
And so I actually make lists of things that I've asked if I can help with, and she says yes, then I better write it down or I'll forget it.
Yeah. I like the list. That's
I mean, I know that's very tactical, but if you say you're going to serve somebody, I think it actually matters that you do it. Mm-hmm. If you don't, again, I think that
that says something too.
That says something too.
Yeah, he asked, he didn't do anything, and that
right. So
that's not good.
I don't want to drop that ball.
Yeah,
particularly when I initiated and said, "What can I do for you?"
That's for sure.
Do X, do Y, do Z. It's like I better do those things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, so let's think about listening, and let's go just a layer deeper here, and let's think about the word empathy here when we think about our family. And sometimes I think we hear the word empathy and we don't really connect the dots on what is empathy. And I thought I knew what it meant, and I wasn't like positive. I mean, I hear about it all the time, and so I looked it up, and it literally just means what I thought it did, but it means to understand and share in what somebody else is going through. And so if I'm with you and I'm trying to like have empathy to you, it's so easy for me to hear what you're going through and even understand it. But if I'm going to really share in it, if you're hurting, then I'm hurting, rather than I'm over here going, I'm really glad I'm not going through what Mark's going through. That's not sharing. That's me. That's probably pity at that point.
It's not empathy.
It's not empathy. I don't know what it is. It's not empathy. And then if you're going through something really great and something happens in your life, and I'm like, I understand that, and I'll tell you, I'm like happy for you, but I'm over here like I wish something great would happen to me. That's actually jealousy. And so that empathy, it pushes us to another level where we know somebody's going through something hard and we're there with them. And it may be as simple as a math test, and we're out of math, and we don't have to worry about that anymore. But we really do we really understand like what it's like to be let's say you got a 12-year-old these days. What's it like to be a 12-year-old today versus what like we can't even relate to that. There were no phones, and I mean, we had phones, but not like computers in our hand. There weren't even computers when we were kids, or not, at least not where I'm growing up. And so I think to understand what somebody's really going through these days is a skill that we have to practice, because our default is going to be to think about what we're going through versus somebody else. And it can be as simple as, hey, what can I get at the grocery store versus, how can I help with, whatever you're doing. I mean, there's just, again, a lot of ways to practice this idea of empathy, but it doesn't have to be a diagnosis and something really hard or some big promotion to have moments where we can really connect with what people are feeling.
Right. But it requires intentionality.
It requires focus and intentionality. And I would say that empathy, another way to listen is not just empathy, but it's actually to listen to support. It goes back to a little bit to what you talked about is, how can I help you? How can I serve you? Just with this mindset of I'm going to do everything I can to open up a way so somebody else can win. I mean,
we are talking about the fundamental of living last.
That's it.
So
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it is a big deal at work when a supervisor shows up thinking, how do I add value to my employees versus extract value? I think the same thing's true at home. If we're not careful, we can just try to get what we want from the people that are closest to us, and then all of a sudden we're definitely not as lovable and probably not even as likable at that point. So, yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah, that's it. So let's just do a little bit of review here. Living last does start with a servant leader mindset, but if you really want to practice today, start by listening. And I'll give you a specific way that I think about this. Maybe this will be helpful to you. Give the person you're talking to the home field advantage. You say, what's the home field advantage? Well, in a baseball game, if the parable is from a baseball story here, in a baseball game, we all know that the home team actually gets to bat last. And I always like to ask myself, what would it be like to be on the other side of the table in this conversation? And if I'm not careful, I'm trying to make my point, and that's not really, there's no empathy there. I want to hear the other person, and then maybe I want to give them the last word. Maybe I don't even need to say any words. I just need to listen to them. But if I do need to say something, I'm going to say it. I want to have the right heart, right tone. I want to make sure I'm trying to help them, support them. But then I want to give them the last word as well. And you don't always have to have the last word as a leader. It's so powerful when you let the people around you weigh in on what's going on. And then ultimately, they have maybe even a final say on some things when you really know that you can have the final say. That's not the way we want to always live, especially when we're in these relationships at home. We have a chance to really level up our listening here, I'm guessing. I know I do. I hope you'll work on it as well. All right, remember, the best leaders lead every day.